Richmond Inspire Parks and Rec Plan with Ryan from Parks and Rec. Thank you for being here, and as I think you guys know, this is now the home of Parks and Rec, and they're in the process of renovating it, but it's really a beautiful facility, and we're so glad that it's back in the community.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. A couple things. First, I'll start with this facility. So, welcome back to Midtown Green. I know you've been here before. Over the past year and a half, we've been undergoing a renovation process to take the office spaces from Bon Secours that were on this side of the building and do a full renovation so that all of our recreation, administrative, maintenance and operation, admin, food, distribution, and out-of-school time folks will have home offices all in one place for the first time in a while. We'll be based out of this facility. This is part of phase 1 of the operational shift. Phase 2 will be another community engagement effort to work with the neighbors around here to see how this space can best be used for community purposes going forward. We have a lot of green space here, a lot of ways we can connect it better, and we know you all have ideas of what that would look like. So we're looking forward to, over the course of, after we get moved in and set up here, having the space be available for more and more community uses. So I'm here to give you a brief update on Richmond Inspire. I've talked to this group about it twice already in the past couple of years. I have an advisory board member in the House. We have a steering committee member in the House. Happy to see you both here. Thanks for your work on this plan. We're now at a 90% document. There is a flyer over on the table that I hope you will pick up on your way out. It looks like this. It has a QR code and a website on it. This will take you to the 90% plan where you can read all 268 pages of it yourself. But if you don't have time to read all 268 pages of this document we spent the last 2.5 years working on, I challenge you to read the executive summary. I think it provides a good overview of how we engage the community, how we set the stage for what we like to see in Parks and Rec over the next decade, and where we really want to focus. If you have a little more time after reading that, I'd encourage you to go all the way to the end of the document, chapter 11, where we have all of our implementation checklists. This is where you can really formulate how you best want to advocate for your community, your favorite park, your issue in Parks and Rec through that document. So what you'll see in that last chapter is just a series of checklists that will talk about policies that we need, that will talk about new studies that we need, that will talk about coordination that needs to happen in between departments, that will talk about standards we want to set at each size of park that we have, that will talk about new programming, and give you the opportunity to say, hey, I'm interested in this, and then it will list all of the different strategies that are related to that in the plan next to it, so it'll allow you to navigate it kind of backwards. So just some high-level overview of what the plan includes. We started with 3 principles in the request for proposals that we put out to put a master plan forward, and those were connectivity, environmental sustainability, and racial equity. And after hearing from the community for almost 2 years, we've expanded our driving principles to include 6 total driving principles of this plan. The plan's organized thematically around access, around welcoming, making our spaces feel welcoming, around equity, around quality, and that's looking both internal and external, around our community, and around the environment. And this is broken down from these driving principles into 14 big moves. These are kind of bucket areas where we really see that we can take action across the city to improve our park system. And then it goes down from there. You've all seen planning documents before, so we have those 6 driving principles, 14 big moves, 34 different strategies to get there, and under those strategies, 201 different action items that we think that we can achieve in the next decade to make our parks and recreation system one of the best in the country. So I hope that you will take some time to look at it before this draft closes on March 6th. You can comment directly in the document anywhere and provide us feedback. We also have a 3-question survey you can fill out. If you just want to give us some overall feedback, we've received some great comments so far. Thank you, Dr. Hoffman. I've read your comments in the document, and we will update accordingly. And we will take all of these into consideration. And once it closes down, we will again update this draft and then bring this draft back to council so they can tell us which way that we want to route it through the city. So we'll probably go into some committee meetings. There'll be more public hearings on it, and we hope to get it adopted as part of Richmond 300 as an amendment to that overall planning ecosystem sometime this late spring, if we're lucky. So that's a big picture overview, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have any about this process or Parks and Rec in general.
Brian, could you walk through the process if people want to rent the facility?
Sure. So on the Parks and Rec website, We have, and I'll have to send this to you so you can put it in your next newsletter, the direct link, but we do have a link for space rental. You'll go through a link and it'll tell you all the rules and regulations of our space rental. And then when you click down on which space you want to rent, it gives you the whole list of them that we have for the whole city. Search for Midtown Green. When you search for Midtown Green, then it'll have some other criteria you'll have to click box on. I don't know what the exact rate for this space is, but I know it's tailored based on who's renting. What's that? $700. So that's high in comparison to a lot of our facilities, but this is one of the nicest facilities we have here. And once you submit that, they'll ask you to pick 1, 2, or 3 options. If you only want this option, just select this option multiple times. And then they'll ask you to provide 3 dates that would work for you or your event or your gathering. And then they'll run that through our calendar system and get back to you within I think it's a 3 business day turnaround to get back on if that date is available, and then work with you on booking. If you're coming through a nonprofit organization, you are required to have a certificate of insurance in order to rent the space. And I don't know what the insurance requirement is for an individual to do like a party or a wedding, but there is an insurance requirement per city policy for any rental of this space, so just keep that in mind if you're doing an event here. I think that's the main pieces of it.
Thank you so much. And yeah, we have great Parks and Rec staff. Let's give them a shout out. I did have the benefit of a tour with Parks and Rec Director Chris Falke, and there are going to be some smaller breakout rooms that would be better for like neighborhood association meeting and things like that. So it's a great location. We'd love to see people using it now, but also please, when Parks reaches out for your input on the larger idea of what we're using, like the first floor, et cetera, be involved in that, because you guys are in the district and this should be our community space informed by what works for y'all. Next up, we have public safety updates from Chief Rick Edwards, and I know our Commonwealth Attorney will be joining us also, but Chief, thank you for spending some time with us tonight.
Thank you, I'll take it. And thanks for having me tonight. So my name's Rick Edwards, I'm the Chief of Police. I can give you a brief overview of crime last year. I'm going to be speaking at our Public Safety Committee on Tuesday, next Tuesday, to discuss this, so you get a sneak peek of it. And I did a press conference 2 weeks ago, but essentially we saw a lot of good news when it came to violent crime last year. So we had reductions in everything except for we were flat on homicide, which was 54 murders last year. And that's tied for the lowest since 2018. We had the lowest number of non-fatal shootings with 171. I know that sounds like a lot, but it's historically the lowest in over 10 years. So pleased with those results. Our homicide clearance rate is right at 80%, which is well above the national average. And I'll talk about some things on why we think that is, but the real numbers were driven down specifically on our property crime. So we have lowered everything in property crime with the exception of a 2% increase in shoplifting, which is continuing to be a challenge for us. But we are holding thieves accountable. In 2020, the law changed with shoplifting. It used to be your third offense, regardless of the cost, would be a felony. That has been taken away. So what we're seeing now is thieves just keep getting tickets for this. And it's, it's unfortunate, but it's something that we're committed to addressing, because what we're seeing is the same faces on video surveillance cameras, particularly going to the ABC stores. So ABC is over 50% of our shopliftings are at ABC. Another thing that we've been dealing with last year, and unfortunately this year, is pedestrians being struck. It's been in the news a lot this week. We had a terrible situation on Monday where a 23-year-old young lady was killed on 2nd Street. But the good news is we were able to make a quick arrest in that case. It was a hit and run, so the person hit her, drove off in a car. We utilized some technology that I'll talk about after this, and we were able to arrest that person within under an hour. And we just announced that we solved an earlier hit and run the same way. So there was a hit and run on Sims Avenue, another young lady who crossed at the intersection in Southside, and she was struck by a car. That car drove off, left her for dead, and she unfortunately passed away. And we were finally able to charge a person in that case. And that was another use of technology. It took a little bit longer, but we got to the same result. And so that kind of leads me into what I've been asked to kind of talk about today. So has anyone here heard about Flock LPR, license plate recognition? Mr. Legion, I see you. Anyone here that wants to talk about it or has specific questions? Because I can share with you, I've met with most of City Council and offered it to all of City Council to come in and do a tour of our real-time crime center and also talk about this technology and why we use it and why we believe it's really effective. What I realized from that was what seems obvious to us in the police, meaning it seems obvious the benefits of this technology, we haven't done a really great job of explaining it to the community. So I'm going to do that on Tuesday at Public Safety, give a review of our program, talk about what the law that was instituted last year by the General Assembly, which put rules and regulations in place for all police departments in the Commonwealth to abide by, and just try to educate our community about why we think it's important to do, and the law that says that it's not a violation of privacy rights. So happy to answer questions if anyone has it, but I can tell you that the last 2 crashes were solved without LPR. They wouldn't have been solved as quickly as they were. And it's not as if it's the only reason in many cases. As a former detective, I'll tell you that there's often many things that lead to a successful conclusion to a case, but this is just a real what we would call a force multiplier, meaning it helps the officers be much more effective and efficient. And having a real-time crime center where there's analysts in a room, a little small room where they're looking at screens, and when an incident like this happens, the officers don't have to go back to the office and look at the computers. They're getting fed information in real time by analysts who are trained to use this technology. So, happy to answer questions. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I live in Scott's Addition, and my name is Jeremy. Just curious, what is the level of severity of a traffic-related infraction that triggers the use of that technology? Because it's clear it was really beneficial for capturing the driver who left the young woman on Monday to die, and the driver south side of the back. I'm just curious, that helped, bring people to justice in a couple of different ways. I'm curious, can you describe at what level does that technology contribute to be used in the case of a traffic infraction?
If you don't mind repeating the question for that.
Okay, so the question was, we talked about the summary of the LPR technology, and the question was, when can it be used at what level? So to start off, what I would say about the level, it has to be a crime. We can't use it for, and sometimes we're getting folks that are misconstruing different technologies. So we now have just brought on board red light cameras. We have speed cameras in school zones, and both of those and the cameras that are on buses, bus arms, when you go around a bus. People think that that's what LPR is, and it's not. That has LPR technology in it, but we're not allowed to use it for anything but those crimes or those traffic infractions. So you could speed past a school on your way to do a drive-by shooting, and we would only be able to, we're not allowed to access that data, so we don't even have ownership of that data. So when I talk about LPR, I'm talking about the 99 devices that we have throughout the city, both south side, north side, in all 4 of our precincts. And it has to be a crime to investigate. So when we investigate a crime, and what changed last year at the General Assembly, effective July 1, was that they came up with rules of the road. Now, I'm part of the Virginia Association of Chiefs of Police, which is groups of chiefs from around the Commonwealth, and we were asked about what we want to see with this technology and the legislation. And what I asked was, what I want to know is, what are the rules? Because we want to know what that is and abide by it. So last year at this time, we were able to retain the data for 30 days, and we could query it. Part of the back and forth of that legislation negotiation was we lowered it to 21 days. So after 21 days, we don't have access to it. And the current LPR system we have doesn't go anywhere. So it's not tied into DMV, it's not checking to see if someone's wanted. What it is you ride by there and it takes a photograph of the license plate. And then if we know that license plate, we can query it. Or if we want to see which tags went through a certain intersection right after a crime, we can query it, but only for 21 days, and then it's deleted. So even, you could be the most serious crime, whatever, after 21 days, we will not have access to that data, and that's part of the negotiation we have. So it has to be a specific criminal investigation to use it. And there's better tracking mechanisms now, so officers are required we have to do audits to make sure that everyone that's queried has a valid report number, so that if we were to come back to that officer and say, why did you run this license plate 6 months from now, they're gonna have notes in there as to why they ran it, and we can audit that. And that's a similar type of auditing we have for our access to DMV. So if some officer in his computer ran a license plate, it has to be for a valid criminal justice reason. And if someone called us and said, well, I wanna know if my ex-husband ran my license plate, we'll check it and conduct an investigation. And if they did, it's a class 1 misdemeanor, they can be charged with a crime. That also changed July 1st of last year. So if an officer or one of our analysts runs a tag that doesn't have a valid criminal justice reason, it can be referred to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office for prosecution. It's a crime to do it now, not just a violation of our policy, which it was before that date. Now it's a crime to do it, which I totally supported as well. I don't know if that answered your question, but if you have a follow-up, I can.
Yeah, I'm happy to try. Just the fact that this young woman was hit and killed, and it's hit and run. But there are a lot of, maybe this camera is also used as a stoplight camera at the same location, where
It's
these
not.
are different. So yeah, I guess like the question I'm asking is like, at what point do the crimes become severe enough to use the technology? Because it's clear that you can use it.
It's
for-
any crime, but the cameras that are designed specifically for red light and for speed, those are traffic violations, but we're not allowed to access them. The law was written that way, specifically forbidding law enforcement to use it for anything but those for which it was designed.
Well, and
So if there's any crime, we can query these. So we also have used it to find missing people. I think a week and a half ago, there was an elderly individual I think it was his daughter called us and said, he's missing, we can't find his car, he has a heart condition. Well, we got the license plate, we ran the tag, we saw that it just went past a place, so officers went and found the person. Thankfully, he was okay, but we were able to use that to try to find a missing endangered person, so you can use it for that as well. Yes, sir?
Sorry, Tom.
No, I think you probably wrapped up that question, but when I went and had a tour, which I really appreciated, they showed us a demonstration of what you would do if you were in that unit and were trying to get information and find a tag. And you had to have a case number. You have to enter a case number. So, paperwork has already been created for an event or crime, and that is what then gets you into the system. So it's not just, I think it would be someone just running a red light or turning right on left or whatever. It's a real.
We wouldn't know
investigation.
about it, but the other thing too that we recently required is we created a document that puts every user on notice, like what you can use it for. One of the things that we get asked about a lot, and some of the concerns certainly after, I guess the last administration's come into office, is that we would utilize this technology for immigration enforcement. So another thing that we were happy to agree with when the law came into place is it's forbidden to use it for anything involving immigration. So, or there was a case where there was an allegation that LPR was used to find someone who left the state to get reproductive health care in another state. Now, apparently that was a misnomer. It was a person it was used for that, but it was a person that was talking about self-harm, like they were gonna do an abortion themselves, and law enforcement used technology to try to find the car to find that person for that reason. But the General Assembly instantiated that in law too. So if someone from another state where abortion was illegal wanted to query for us, it would be unlawful for us to share that. And that's the other thing that recently changed too. We cannot share it with federal authorities of any agency, and we can't not even share it outside the Commonwealth. So right now, there are other agencies within the Commonwealth that have access, we have access to their LPR, and they have access to ours. So if I run a tag for a murder that happens in Richmond, and the tag shows up in Newport News later, we'll know that data. But if they went into West Virginia or North Carolina, we wouldn't. Yes, sir?
I just had a quick question. Could it be maybe LPR or any of the other cameras that the city uses for crimes in progress?
Yes, and we use that often. So right now, there's folks in a room, like in our real-time crime center, they're listening to a radio. So when they hear that call, we don't have cameras everywhere as much as I'd like it, but if we got a call for a robbery in progress at a store that shares their camera data with us, and we can go live on it, we do that. If we have access to cameras in many parts of the city, but not everywhere. Some of the private apartment complexes, Belt Atlantic's one of them, allows us to log into their private security. So if we get a shots fired call in there, before the officers even get on scene, they're pulling up cameras. And not only is that incredibly effective for catching the person, but it makes life a lot safer for the officers because they know what they're walking into. And I'll say this too. I did a press conference 2 days before New Year's Eve, and I talked to the community, and I said, I'm sure everyone in this room knows about it, about shooting guns in the air on New Year's Eve. Told people not to do it. I said, we're gonna be following up with these investigations, and we use that technology to find people shooting guns. We did 18 search warrants, we seized 30 guns, 11 people have been arrested, one of them filmed himself doing it. 15 people sent that to me and said, Chief, look at this guy shooting, and he was a privileged person who was convicted on.
The only reason I asked is because I had an actual incident happen today in which I saw multiple violations. I called it in real time and provided the license plate number. My concern after that fact was that, well, will the police act on it because they are not exactly observing the crime happening in front of them?
What was the crime?
Oh, they were swerving in and out of traffic, driving erratically, but anyway, pretty dangerous environment.
Mhm.
And so if later down the road, you know, the officer does see this car with the license plate that I gave them, they would have to observe the traffic infraction,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yes. So some crimes, there's, with a few exceptions for misdemeanors, the officer has to witness it himself. Domestic violence is one of the exceptions, brandishing a firearm where a third party can tell us that and we can make arrests. But if it's something traffic related, we have to witness it ourselves. But how many people are annoyed by the takeover style vehicles where they go to intersections and do donuts in the middle of the road? That's something that's come to our city many times. We use our cameras, we use traffic cameras and LPR to try to find people doing that. So that's another, because that's a public safety risk. People have been killed doing that, not in Richmond, but in other cities. And if you haven't seen it, it's really frustrating for motorists. They get frustrated and, you know, get out of their cars and sometimes want to fight with folks. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Sonia Crump, and I'm the executive director of Historic Richmond, and our office is about 2 blocks away from where Luke was killed. And I just want to say thank you for being so quick about finding the person who did that. It was really hard to do. And we were able to find the person.
Well, I'll just say this about that case, and you know, I'm a Commonwealth attorney, and I talked about this publicly many times about the importance of being careful when you drive. That these folks who die in these incidents are just as lost as if they're killed by gunfire. And we take it just as seriously, and that is an incredible tragedy for anyone in our city to lose their life. And I am glad though that we have the resources available to get justice for that case and make a quick arrest. Mr.
Just
Legion?
quickly, I think there's something good news about arguably, there's a bunch of stuff, but the thing is that, not too long ago, we had someone that was living in their car with their dog, and Officer Ryan came through to help that process out, and I don't think people know about it, I think you call it Operation Hope, something like that, and kind of pay attention to things like that, and so I think that's something that needs to be talked about more often for civic associations, because if we're not aware of this, and that's one of the things that I think we need to be made aware of more so than just so that people know that if you see someone that's in distress and maybe homeless for the most part, that there is part of the organization that's looking out for them.
Yes, so what Mr. Legion was talking about was our HOPE unit. So that is officers that have special training to deal with folks that are unhoused. And they work with sometimes clinicians, sometimes nonprofits. And Officer Ryder's a perfect example of the type of officer we want in a unit like that. So he actually has an interesting story. He retired from the Hanover Sheriff's Office, but he's still relatively young and wanted to serve, and he came to Richmond to work with us. And we knew very quickly he had the right disposition, the right heart to be able to deal with people who are on their worst day, the compassion, and he is just along with some of our other officers who focus on that area, are really looking to help people. Because the problem, and I think this comes into play a lot, the police are dragged into all kinds of things that I don't really want to be involved in, and one of them is homelessness. But the reason we have to be involved is because the social workers won't go there without protection. We don't have to be the lead on it all the time. When you're dealing with someone in crisis, or whether you're dealing with someone who's experiencing homelessness, the issue is this: we can't get the experts there without a feeling of security. So that's why we partner with clinicians, and we partner with other individuals who are experts in that field, but can do so in a relatively safe way, because we have a part to play in that as well. Yes. Oh, did you read up?
Any blue flag up there?
So what he's referring to is the 4th Precinct won the award for the lowest crime rate this year. They had the biggest reductions. We're really proud of them. I don't know if it's a supply chain issue, but we have to raise a flag, and it has the year and the date, and the precincts really get excited about it, but they've been delaying the flag. So we're going to invite everyone to come to the flag raising for Captain Leno and the 4th Precinct. We're really proud of their work this year. Sorry, he was first. Yes.
I think I read last year something about LPR data being accessed by, I think it was something from the ATF. I don't remember if that was in Richmond or somewhere else in Virginia. And I think at the time the article said this was not, I don't know if it was illegal, but they weren't supposed to do this. This was against policy.
I think I saw that same article. It was No King's Day, perhaps.
No, this is something different. So I know because I notified the media of that at a press conference. So it was our city. I can tell you that it was ATF, and this was in March. We had given access to an ATF analyst, and I'll tell you, it didn't occur to us that ATF would be roped into immigration enforcement. But that analyst shared information with the Department of Homeland Security for looking for individuals. So I think that's one of the things that precipitated the law change. When I learned about it, I called the special agent in charge of the Washington field office. We met. We obviously took access back from that and told the community what happened. Because if I'd have known about it, we never would have allowed that. But we work so closely with ATF on other cases. And we work on gun cases, gang cases, all those things. That it was really frustrating to me that it was used in such a way. But did you have more follow-up? So that can't happen. We're not allowed to share it with ATF anymore. But did you have follow-up on that?
I guess my question is just, are there ways that we can ensure that they can't access it? Like, is it just a matter of policy, or is it they literally don't have access to it?
Well, we had given their analysts direct access. So now that's forbidden. We've taken that all back. We're unable to share it with anyone else. So that same issue won't happen again. And it was something that it never occurred to us that it would be used in such a way, but I guess we didn't realize how immigration enforcement was going to be leveraged throughout all federal agencies, because they all had to participate in it. And that's why the law changed, I think. Yes, sir.
While we're on the subject matter, my question is more related to preparedness on the side of the police. And is the growing fear of our federal government in the city of Richmond. And we're wondering if there are any protocols that are already being set in place in Richmond to protect the citizenry from the federal agents that are obviously quite rogue at this point. And so, do you have any advice for us as community members who are out there and who don't want to get killed just because they're citizens?
Well, the questions about a rogue agency involving ICE and concerns about what the community can do to avoid that. What I'll tell you is that a lot of questions come to the Richmond Police Department about will we sign a 287G, which is the ability for the federal government to deputize our officers and give them the authority of ICE agents. So we have officers who have dual authority with FBI, DEA, ATF, and the U.S. Marshals. And they know they're forbidden from participating in any immigration activity. So I've been very clear with our officers that if the only way we would respond to an incident is if all hell's breaking loose and there's a riot, or if people are being attacked, we're going to go and restore order. but we will not participate in that. Our officers, unfortunately, we've had to take several steps. I'm wearing what's called a Class A uniform, but most of our officers, the ones you would see on the street, wear an outer carrier vest. And it says police on the back. So because they're being approached now, even though they wear these patches, and I think they look like Richmond police, people are approaching them thinking they're ICE, so we've changed the back patch to say Richmond police. We're ordering those for all the officers to try to make ourselves more identifiable. And I had a meeting today about trying to re-engage our immigrant community specifically. So for the last 20 years, we've had a Latino Academy every year, where we brought folks in from the immigrant community to learn about their police department, to learn about their rights and responsibilities, and how to get through mock traffic stops, and learn what police officers do every day, how to not be the victim of crime. We couldn't do it last year because there was so much fear. Because of that, so myself, the sheriff, Commonwealth attorney, we had a meeting with individuals from the immigrant community and talked about specifically what their police department, what their city government's gonna do for them. And I mentioned this at the end of last year. We're seeing concern not only for our community, but specifically the immigrant community in various neighborhoods who are not calling 911 anymore. We've seen 30% reduction in 911 calls in Southwood, which is a largely Latino community. Most of them, and also about 30% less domestic violence calls, which is one of the violent crimes that was up this year, one of the few. So I have a lot of concern that is happening, and people are not trusting their police department enough to call 911. So we have to keep re-engaging and ensuring people that we're there, everyone's police department, regardless of what their passport says. We need folks to call us. Ms. McEachin's office last year had a successful prosecution for 2 robbers, American robbers, who robbed 7 different individuals from the Latino community. All 7 showed up in court, testified, and we got a successful result. And what scares me is I don't know if we can get 7 people to come to court now. Because those crimes took place in 2024, the trial took place in 2025. I don't know that we can do that. But I want to keep working on that and encouraging our community that, we don't ask people's immigration status. It's irrelevant to us. The Commonwealth attorney doesn't ask that before she decides whether or not to prosecute cases. And what we're thinking of doing as a city is having more of these like seminars, so we can go to the community directly and talk about their rights. We did it last year, and it was eye-opening to me. So,
Follow up.
yes, sir.
So, I think the big question is, when push comes to shove and you're deputized, who do you protect? Are you gonna protect the citizens of Richmond, or are you gonna protect the federal agents?
Well, we're not going to be deputized. I can't imagine.
Okay, just made my day.
Yeah, we won't do that, and for me, I think that, we have a very special role in policing, and the immigration and enforcement is the domain of the federal government, so,
That's a message that people need to hear.
yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief, I really appreciate it. And, just one more time, make sure with the public safety meeting is, because that'll be probably another opportunity to hear this information.
Yes, so it'll be more in depth. We'll show some videos. I didn't have a PowerPoint I could bring here today, but if you want to come, it's going to be Tuesday at 1 p.m. at City Hall, 2nd floor on the dais. I'll be up there. Feel free to yell at me and ask me tough questions. I'm used to it.
Okay. Thank you so much. And any of the subcommittee meetings and council meetings can be accessed from your computer at home. If you just Google the name of the committee you want to watch, you'll find the agenda, and there'll be a link to go in. Next up, we have our wonderful Commonwealth attorney. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hello, Second District. So for those of you who have never seen me before, my name is Colette Wallace McEachin. I'm the Commonwealth Attorney for the City of Richmond, and I am here to answer any questions you may have about how pedestrian fatalities are prosecuted, how they're investigated, why people aren't charged immediately, how long charges take, how the grand jury works. The last 72 years, a murderer got a couple of days ago. So happy to answer any questions for you. Yes, sir.
The principal that got ran over,
Mr. Music?
Mr. Music, quite a while ago, was that accidental, or what happened with that?
There was no criminal offense, and so it was investigated, and my office declined prosecution.
Thank you.
I believe there's a civil action going on. Yes, sir.
What is the major cause of it? Is it distracted driving? Is it speeding? What is there?
Just go, keep going.
It's just a variety of mixed bag.
Keep going, yeah.
I got it.
Yeah, yeah. So, the mayor and I met this afternoon, and, as Councilwoman knows, he talked about 3 things that his new Department of Transportation is focused on. And one is obviously, people's behavior, to your point. And it's difficult to change adult people's behavior, as we all know. If I ask people here to raise your hands if you've been driving a car and a pedestrian or a cyclist did something that made you think, oh my God, I could have hit you, raise your hand.
On the way here.
Oh, okay. If you are a pedestrian or a cyclist and you were on a sidewalk or crossing or in a road, and you raise your hand if you were that, and you were thinking like, that car is trying to hit me. Yes, right? So it goes both ways. And so I know emotionally that people feel if there is an interaction between a motor vehicle and a pedestrian or a cyclist, the motor vehicle driver must be at fault. That tends to be where people go. And that is not always the case. And so the investigations take time because we want to make sure not only that we have probable cause to charge someone, but that ultimately 6 months later, when this case is actually going to trial, we could convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that that motorist did something that was criminal. So that is why sometimes it takes a minute. Go ahead, monopolize. Go for it.
I love the bump outs on Cary and Main, and I feel like I see less crashes or whatever on those streets, and I don't know if you guys monitor that, but have you noticed like the positive effect of the bump outs?
So I will say my office does not monitor that, and so I don't know, but I'm assuming that is something Bobby Vincent or DPW does.
I think that is information that they will be tracking, absolutely, and I look forward to having our new DOT director here. He is doing double duty at another meeting, but he will be joining us later, and I would love to posit that question to him.
Thank you, yeah.
Anything else?
I got one more. Is the Mr. Valentine the guy?
Yes, Bill.
Mr.
Martin.
Martin? Is that a criminal thing? An investigation?
Yes, that is under investigation.
Oh.
And I will make a public statement about that so that, because I know that it's been topmost in a lot of people's minds. And so, it will not be something you have to wonder about. I wonder what happened with that. I will make a public statement.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Kincaid.
What about with the marijuana laws, changing, like we have a vape shop at 102 West Broad? It's not a vape shop, it's a marijuana shop.
It can't be, because marijuana is not legal.
It's a marijuana shop, that has, farm, fell under the farm bill gray area. And
With the
it's-
hemp and everything.
The
with the-
Virginia Department of Agriculture is giving them some kind of permit
Mhm.
with the level of THC, and they were rated because they were doing illegal activity, in December on top of, their legality of having their THC and selling that. They were delivering and, had firearms and everything like that, so they were rated effectively, but, we heard that through the grapevine that they're going in front of a court system on the 26th of this month, to be able to see if they can get their, business license back, basically to move back in after being rated.
Yeah, people have asked me about this very same issue, so I think this will be one, because it's so specific, we should just follow up offline.
Yeah.
But I think as a topic, when we see these businesses rated for illegal use, it's very frustrating to see them reopen so quickly. And I know that Director Bonk has said some of these get reopened because it was a code violation, like, they blocked their fire exit. And they resolved that, and that allows them to reopen. But I also feel like I've heard there's opportunity to somehow tie the business license process into, like, if you have, convictions of XYZ happening on your property, why should the city continue to give you a business license? And this is something probably on my end, but if you have any advice on how we can more effectively keep these bad operators continue to reopen, but then also I think you maybe wanted to ask specifically about marijuana.
Just a specific follow-up. We heard within the law that they need to be so far away from schools and everything like that. But Virginia Repertory Theater is approximately 50 feet away from it, and they have children busted from Hanover and Henrico, Prince George, to come and see theater there. And they're part of our business alliance, and so walking through a crowd, a puff of marijuana smoke, and then the kid going back to their mom in Chesterfield saying, hey, I smelled marijuana in Richmond today, at the theater, that could get the theater in trouble and everything, and everything like that with all that stuff. So it's kind of, if that falls into the law, like, because they have children, programming, just like art ladies around the corner as well.
So I do not believe the law covers that circumstance, so, I would say that. So, I was also at the General Assembly today, and, Catherine knows how I feel about the General Assembly sometimes. And so, hopefully they will get their act together and make a coherent, clear statement about what is and isn't legal regarding the use, purchase, distribution, growth, medical necessity of marijuana, but they're not here yet. And so I think if the chief were still here, what he would say is, given how shorthanded our PD is, it's still over 100 officers short. They are not going to go after someone toking marijuana on Broad Street, right? And, sorry?
Or should they?
There you go. I think they should, but they're not going to. But that's a difference of opinion. But my point is that the marijuana laws are so unclear that a lot of people think it's okay to smoke marijuana in public. It's like smoking a cigarette. I can grow my 4 marijuana plants. I can have 1 ounce of marijuana for my personal use. That's all legal. So smoking, some weed publicly must be okay too. And it's not, but honestly, it's also not something that is going to be enforced because a violation is only a civil offense. Nobody is going to jail for smoking marijuana or having a little weed on them. So there's that. I don't know if that helps answer your question or if that's just me venting.
I have a follow-up.
Okay, well, Liz had something and then,
Yeah, I guess I feel like we're in a even grayer area than we have been, with kind of a lame duck situation, like, is your office going to continue to prosecute marijuana crimes and those kind of things while we're in this weird period of, and the chief, I know, has said, like, it's weird for them, they don't know what's right or not, so we've got to hanging up or whatever.
so my office prosecutes marijuana crimes, but the marijuana that most people think about and that we see and we smell is not, either it's not a crime, it's a civil offense, so then my office does not get involved. It's like you paying a traffic ticket. Or it's so de minimis that you are going to end up with maybe a misdemeanor conviction and all suspended time. And so it is only serious drug dealers, 5 pounds and over, who are dealing marijuana, or marijuana where a situation that marijuana gets involved in, why I hate marijuana and all drugs, is because, there's a situation where there's a marijuana drug deal going on, and that seems, a relatively small amount of drugs, let's say less than a pound. And that's going on, but because it's drugs, everybody's got a gun. So then somebody gets nervous, and then somebody shoots somebody, and now I have a homicide on my hands over marijuana. So
That's what we were seeing issues with the dispensaries there, the uptick of firearms.
absolutely true.
And we didn't know that a dispensary was allowed to be just a regular vendor dispensary without people coming in. Having to say something, like, they showed their ID and they get
I don't know anything about that, I'm sorry. Yep, yes, sir, and then ma'am.
I love that we come together as a community. We've spoken before about things like this. I just wanted to say that as a community, we also have to make sure that we're not criminalizing something because of moral, or what's the word I'm looking for? Morals. The repertoire theater's primary function isn't a school or gathering place for children, although it does happen a lot. And yes, there will be children walking in and out of the repertoire theater. I've seen it myself in time. But to me, that doesn't translate well enough into say, should we break a law to ban vape shops anywhere a child might be? And if that's the case, I would also argue we should do that for those who smoke cigarettes. The marijuana dispensary you're talking about, that's one that's right next to
It's
store?
Vans Row.
Yeah, okay, I know it's right next to.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yes, thank you. What about, the marijuana smoking in the yard? What are the?
What did you say, Jerome?
License plate reader, that's what he said, not me, Jerome.
The question was, is it legal to smoke marijuana and drive?
No, because you should not be smoking marijuana in public. That is illegal. Yeah. Also, you would end up being driving while impaired, and that is also illegal.
I have to imagine they differentiate between a person who may open eye and they got the car and drive, and a person who's driving and is smoking. Is there a difference?
I guess I'm not understanding your question.
So the question is, someone is at home and they happen to smoke marijuana, and then 25 minutes later they go to the grocery store and they're driving to the grocery store. Is that the same as driving? and
While
smoking
impaired?
And smoking. Well, it is driving while impaired, it's like.
It's like if you
So-
play at home,
Yeah,
it's
it's
their car.
So I imagine, is it similar to the alcohol?
So what I will say, if you tell me if this is answering your question, what I will say is, because of 2020 and everything that's happened there, one of the things that the police are no longer able to do is, stop a driver because of the, scent of marijuana. And so, the fact that you are driving, a police officer might pull you over. Okay, so you smoke some weed at your house, you got in your car, you're driving to Willow Lawn, you're still in the city of Richmond, and you forgot to get your registration updated. There's something that is legal for the police to pull you over, and the police pull you over and they smoke marijuana. They smell marijuana. That in and of itself does not give them grounds to arrest you for driving impaired. If they don't see any other driving activity that shows that you were impaired.
Right.
Sir?
I have a similar question, but I guess it's more narrow. If the police breathalyze someone and they blow like .08, that's sufficient to establish that they're driving drunk, and they
Yes.
can be charged with driving drunk.
Yes.
Is there a similar test that has like invisible ignorance for campus to prove that they were high while?
No.
All right, last question.
Just going back to the vape shop process or the problem for the most part, having had this experience is that they change ownership real fast, and so therefore it's hard to catch them. And so the question is, what kinds of, and I guess this is more for you, Catherine, what kind of process or ordinance do you think that could be put in place to kind of say to them, you know, this shop can't be open period because of its history and not so much its ownership.
We are working with the planning department to try and find some better avenues like that, and one that has been identified is going through the landlord, the property owner, and saying this, your property's a nuisance. This is a community nuisance, and because of, they're selling drugs, guns, whatever it is, and taking that route. And I think they've effectively used that once, on Chamberlain Avenue. So I think that is a tool that we're trying to apply in that manner, but I would look at more. So it is something we talk about. What? Clay Street Market.
All right, thank you all. I'm gonna leave my cards with Spencer as well, so thank you.
Great, well, we are going to roll into Richmond Public Schools update with Board Member Katie Ricard. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Hi, good evening. I feel like I can't compete with these topics. They're really fascinating. Welcome, Katie Ricard, Second District School Board Member. I'm gonna kind of give a few highlights and then talk about a few things. Kindergarten and preschool registration has started. So if you know anyone of that age, please let them know they enroll online. But they are also going to try to do some kindergarten signing days at all our elementary schools, probably in April, where they can also go and take pictures and do all those fun things. There is also Dogwood Middle School, which, as you may or may not know, is an arts integrated school. They are doing a big dance showcase on Friday the 27th at 7 p.m. and Saturday the 28th at 11 a.m. And that's open to the community at Dogwood Middle School. And then the final thing is that in March, it is Fruit and Veggie Week at our elementary schools, and this is sponsored by a bunch of community partners, but put on by Fit for Kids, and they need volunteers to serve at all their schools. It's Tuesday through Friday, typically around lunchtime. You do normally have to commit for the whole time. There is elementary schools all across the district. Of course, Fox and Carver are in District 2. But what it does is it introduces our kids to maybe unique fruits and vegetables or combinations that they may not have had. So last year they had like a spinach salad with blueberries, a balsamic vinaigrette. They had fruit with tahini on it. I went on watermelon radish day, which they're really just beautiful looking, and so the kids found that fascinating to try. So it's really fun, but they do just need a lot of help. So if that's something that maybe would bring you joy, I'm gonna leave my card, and if you wanna email me, I'm happy to send you the sign up. Yeah.
Do you know what the volunteer capacity is for Carver and Fox? How many they need?
It's typically 3 to 4 each day, so about 12-ish volunteers. All right. So I guess the big thing that is on the school board's mind, of course, and I know on city council and the mayor's mind, is the budget. And so I brought a few documents that I'm going to leave if it interests you on how the schools do their budget. One is our budget timeline. So we actually have a budget hearing tomorrow night at City Hall at 6 p.m. And that is when the school board will kind of be giving some additional thoughts and questions to the superintendent about the budget that he submits to us. We will then vote in the budget at our March meetings, and then it'll then be sent to the mayor. He will incorporate it into the budget that he submits to city council. But one thing that people sometimes ask is, where does the money come from for our schools? And of course it comes from the state, the federal government, and then the city. And most of our funding does come from the city. One thing that particularly hurts Richmond Public Schools and the city of Richmond in terms of our education funding is how the state determines the funding that we receive. And that's through a formula called the LCI. And just to, the LCI is based on 3 factors: real estate property, adjusted gross income, and the amount of retail shares compared with the number of students served by our school division. So for, when you put all that together, Richmond's LCI is 58%, which says that we need to pay 58%, we meaning the city, needs to pay 58% of our education. Henrico is 43% and Chesterfield is 36%. So it's really frustrating being in the city of Richmond when Chesterfield only has to pay 36% of their costs and the state picks up the rest.
You're welcome to boo at this point. If anyone wants to boo.
Fairfax, Loudoun County are just over us in like the mid-60s. So we are closer to them than we are to Henrico and Chesterfield. And that really is hurting us and what we can provide our students, what we can do for our teachers. And it puts a real, real pressure on the city to find additional money for us. So I'm gonna leave all this if like, this is exciting bedtime reading for you. I actually do think it's kind of interesting. But it talks about that. It also just talks about what our capital investment needs are. It talks about our state average of teacher pay, which right now we are paying more than our surrounding areas, which we feel is important because we know that our teachers are oftentimes supporting students who come from more trauma and more poverty than the areas around us. The final thing I want to say about that is one thing, I've been down at the General Assembly at least one day a week since it's begun. And what we've been talking to our state legislators about is that we do believe that when the state funds and puts in additional funds for our at-risk populations, which would be our economically disadvantaged students, our English language learners, and our exceptionally educated students, that it is paying off. So for instance, last year, our Black students had the highest graduation rate on record at 88%. Our economically disadvantaged, also the highest at 84%. And our English language learners, their reading pass rates actually surpass the state average. So it shows that the money, and I have some handy flyers that also share all that good news if you want to pick that up and share it with your neighbors. But I know there's always a lot of talk about the amount of money that Richmond Public Schools takes for our students. And it is a lot. The per pupil amount is much larger compared to our surrounding counties. But our students do need more. They are coming with more significant needs. But what I do believe is that it is paying off because their rates are rising. And we have a long way to go. We're not above the state average in any of our SOL test scores, and we want to be there for our kids. But I think we are trending in the right way. So how can you help? Yesterday was crossover day in the General Assembly, and so now they are really beginning to decide what they are going to fund and not fund. And if you are willing to email your legislator, I think for most of us it is Delegate Carr, but for some of you it might be Delegate Cousins and then Senator Bagby. If you're willing to email them and just say, please support funding for our students, particularly any at-risk funding or any funding that supports school construction and modernization, because of course our schools need a lot of help, I would really appreciate that. Just identify that you're a constituent. If you have a personal story to share, that's great, but just let them know that it's important to you. Sometimes I think it actually means a lot when it's someone who doesn't have kids, but just cares about their city. So if you can do that, that would be lovely.
Do you have like a talking point or actual legislation that folks can mention in the body of the email, like specifically this line item in this budget?
Yeah, HB 92 is a House bill that is looking to increase the at-risk add-on, which would really help RPS support our students. So that's a big one. But I'll leave my card, and if you want to pick it up, I can send you other bills, but that's a big one for us.
Within the next couple of years, as cannabis sales become legal, I believe the money's earmarked for education, is it not?
I don't know. I know, interestingly, and I need to check the status on whether this bill made it through crossover, but there has become an increasing push for lottery money. Everyone says, oh, lottery money goes to education. True, but the state tends to use it to fund its percentage of education funding, when what schools are beginning to ask for is, can the lottery funds go directly to districts, maybe in terms of school construction and modernization, but can this money actually help us? Because a lot of times that's what we hear, well, there's all this money, but I have not heard about the cannabis.
I guess more broadly, is there anything you see in the future that could increase the funds other than just people just voting for more?
So there is a legislation that has made it through, that was actually voted in at least last year and maybe the year before, but Governor Youngkin vetoed it. And it was to allow localities to add an additional 1% sales tax that would go towards school construction and modernization. And so if that passes and Governor Spanberger signs it, we would be asking City Council to consider passing that, and it would then go for referenda in November for everyone to vote on. And that 1% sales tax would bring in significant money for our school construction that we know the city hasn't been able to provide us, but would allow us to put aside, if you pick this up, you'll see a lot of our deferred maintenance on our facilities, and it would allow us to begin to chip away at that. And also maybe potentially even start dreaming of building schools. For instance, the South Side is really overcrowded already.
So I had to file FAFSA when I went to college, and there's this thing called the expected family contribution. So essentially, that's what the LCI funding is, right? It's, right?
Yes, yes, you're right, yeah. Yes.
Oh, yeah, just wanted to try and understand.
Yeah, exactly.
When the Democrats won the Senate and the House and the governorship, were you excited that their budget was going to be short? Or like, what is it? It seems crazy to me that the school budget is short with such dim leadership. And the city was managed to find $6 million for a man wrongly convicted and pull another rabbit out the hat to pay for sports backers. Is there going to be an economic miracle for the kids in the schools? Or?
So we have been talking to our senators and our delegates, and we do feel they're hearing us on the need for additional money this year, and we are hoping that it will be found for us, in part through this at-risk add-on that could get RPS an additional $9 to $10 million, which would do a lot for us. But I do feel the General Assembly is hearing that education funding is needed this year after a few years of it not being what it could be. And I think there will be more the following year, and this year it's kind of what can we do?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then I think that's pretty much everything from me. The only thing I wanted to bring up is I heard the question about ICE. And of course, I just wanted to reiterate that RPS also has its own protocols. If an immigration agent was to ever show up at schools, there would need to be a warrant. We would then contact central office. They would show up to make sure everything happened. That has not happened yet, but it is something that we take really seriously for our kids and for their safety. Thank you so much, Katie.
And it is fun to go down to the General Assembly. If you do have time, you can go around, and actually I think it's one of the best deals in town is the General Assembly's cafeteria. Meriwether, yeah. Our next guest, we're super excited about, 6 years on council, and all 6 years people have been asking for a dedicated Department of Transportation. So we are inching closer to that as a reality. We now have one that is called Department of Transportation. It has a director. Andy, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Woo!
I know you didn't hear the applause for the earlier folks, but I think this was the most enthusiastic. Nothing against anyone else. So
I'll learn soon if that's sarcasm or not. Oh my
Hey.
and just as a time check, we are at past 7, so I think we'd like to wrap up around 7:30. And please don't, feel like you're rushing. We can always follow up later, but I'm going to leave time in case you guys have any general comments or questions from my office. Thank you.
Thanks for having this. Yeah, there we go. I wrote down a few notes that I thought would be helpful to share, but then basically it's the AMA in this audience. But so the Department of Transportation, so I thought it'd be helpful, even though it might sound like boring corporate structural talk. There are a couple of things that are different that, for the outside resident, are going to be changes. One very big advantage in setting up this department inside of Public Works is that we don't have to fight for resources with groups that ordinarily we would be fighting for both staff and budgets. So for example, we don't have to hire dozens of admin staff and have our own IT setup. If we were this wholly outside group, it would take ages and a fortune. So that's something that was a great structure set up based on best practices for the size of city that we are and the nature of our government setup. But we've got 4 main buckets inside of transportation. So transportation planning, transportation engineering, plan alignment, which is essentially making sure that the things that are proposed, that come through the development, they come through the plan department or economic development, that they're aligned with Richmond 300 master plan or Richmond Connects, the multimodal transportation plan. And then the 4th bucket is community engagement. I'll talk to you more about why a tweak in the first 2 buckets is important, but something I can't overemphasize how important and good it is that we're able to have our very own community engagement bucket entirely within transportation. I mean, I'm biased. My entire career has been in transportation or urban planning. So I think that transportation stories are the most important to tell. But it's underneath everything we do. So you may have heard the kind of, I mean, it's jargon, frankly, but I'll describe it. Vision Zero. We're a Vision Zero city. We're a complete street city. So Vision Zero meaning we want to completely eliminate severe crashes and fatal crashes. So everyone should be able to get home alive. That's our North Star. Related to that is complete streets, which means however you get around. Most people drive, but if you walk, if you ride a bike, if you use the bus, which is an extension of walking, if you happen to drive, you'll be able to have options to get around town safely in any of those modes. So being able to talk with people about these things year round is going to be huge. So this is not just like there's a project coming, here's the signal on a tower, beeping information at you. There will still be that. Big projects will have their own kind of surveys and all that kind of thing about here's the concept design, here's other things. But year round, what's the origin of a project? So before a project even has life breathed into it, you'll be part of those kinds of conversations. Funny, I made a note, I was making a couple of notes from the previous speakers because I realized that they were touching on things that are very important for transportation that I wouldn't have thought of bringing up tonight, but I think it's relevant. Funding. I think it's important for you to know, if you don't already, only about 5% of the Department of Transportation's budget is local money. 95% is from grants that are federal, state, and regional. That's huge because that means, you were talking about schools just a minute ago, we're hardly ever fighting with schools. I don't want to fight with kids. I've got 2 of my own boys. That's enough of a thing. So we don't have to compete nearly as much as a lot of other cities around the country have to compete with local money because the grant writing machine inside of the department is so good. So right now we're at, if you include operations, it's about a $1.2 billion enterprise. So it's about $750 million that's safety improvement projects. And so that's a combination of things that you see with your eyes, like bump outs, bike lanes, or more like Jack Road is about to get started, some of the heavy infrastructure that you see where curbs are moving and that sort of thing. It's those big, expensive projects. And then it's also all the lighter weight, I'll call them, projects. But to be able to have hundreds of millions of dollars that's not competing with local resources is so fantastic, which is why we're able to be doing so much in the next, that's over the next 5 or 6 years that we'll be spending that kind of money. There was something, and then the other thing I made a note of is General Assembly. So I'm not a lobbyist, but General Assembly, again, if you're already motivated, whether it's for schools or something else, to send messages to your elected leaders, a couple of things that are really important state level things that impact us. And even though we, DOT, are not competing for local money, a couple examples of how we compete with others and why it's so important that some of these state laws get changed. The safety camera program. You saw a couple years ago, we started to have cameras come in where you're going just at schools, and only in the morning when there's kids coming and going, and only in the afternoon when there's kids coming and going. Those speed cameras are limited by the population of the city or county, and the time of day that you use them is limited by state law. So we're handcuffed, and using the enforcement terms, in how much or little we can have safety cameras. We know there's a dramatic drop in crashes and a dramatic drop in injuries and fatalities when you have these kinds of cameras. We were able to just recently expand to red light running cameras. Again, at the state level, there's all these rules that keep us from using more of them. So we're only able at this point to start with a pilot of 10 different intersections, which are the worst offenders in the city, for red light running. It's good. We're grateful to be able to have 10. We're grateful that 13 schools are able to have speed cameras. But like right now, for example, the school where there were the fewest amount of tickets, it's still a lot of speeding going on. Again, when kids are there, only in the 2 hours in the morning and only in 2 hours in the afternoon. But there's another school where the speeding's ticked up because there's no camera right there. So we're having to move one to a different school. If the state level laws were to change, we would have more flexibility to do more of that type of enforcement. And then another thing related to funding that's good news. Just today we learned that there's a program called Transportation Alternatives Program, which is a misnomer because if we're born human beings with legs and feet, most of us, then walking and bicycling and walking to the bus should be primary. That's for transportation. That's not an alternative. The car is just another alternative. But that aside, we were successful on 5 out of 6 grant applications. So I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, part of it is in our district. Franklin Street was one of those that will be awarded. June is when this will be official, when at the state level they officially bless the list. But there are a few really important pedestrian improvement projects that will be going on, a mixture of north and south side. So that was exciting to share.
I'm sorry, I've been here for an hour and 15 minutes. I came here just to hear you talk and to talk about pedestrian improvements in Monroe Ward. My office is a block and a half away from where Hope was killed. I sent an email, I filed a 311 request 2 years ago, trying to get some speed traffic improvements on Main Street. And I've asked again yesterday.
Then you'll like the next part. So the next,
Okay,
so
well, please.
back to so there's the 4 buckets. So the last one, community engagement, that I was telling you about, this exciting stuff. Back to the first 2 of transportation planning and transportation engineering. One of the things that we're going to be able to do very efficiently, again, because of sharing staff and resources. So being able to, the 2 of us, you're thinking about what's the construction project underway, and I'm over here in my own silo, once upon a time, dreaming up a low-cost improvement. Lighter, quicker, cheaper is the program that we call it. Now, you and I are working together. So you can tell me, Andy, don't do that project yet, because next summer, that street is going to get ripped up for $1 million street improvement project. You're going to look like a moron if you go spend money right now. So that alone is huge. And then the shared money is going to be huge. We're going to be able to do so many more. I don't want to say 10x because it might be 20x. I don't know. We're going to be able to do so many more of the lighter, quicker, cheaper, or quick build type projects. Where that comes back to your question about Main and Cary. One of the pilot projects. So, is everybody here familiar with the lighter, quicker, cheaper, or should I define it better? What? Define it? All right. So, lighter, quicker, cheaper, sometimes known as quick build, sometimes tactical urbanism in some cities or states around the country, is essentially an engineering. It's a best practice, but it's the MacGyver version. It's, I only have this much money instead of tons of money, so what can I do that is very affordable relative to moving concrete and pouring new asphalt, but has high impact. So it's not just do something for the sake of doing it, it's doing something that will have a demonstrated impact. So an example of a lighter, quicker, cheaper project would be a type of road diet that's not concrete. So if Main and Cary Street, for example, one of the pilot projects from Lighter, Quicker, Cheaper will be, if you visualize, you're talking about east of Belvedere, right? So east of Belvedere on Main and Cary, where 4 lanes wide, if you're standing, picture the top of one of those hills, and you're looking down and you see parking on both sides, but it looks like a 4-lane street. One way, that way, and then Cary coming, is the mirror image. Being able to restripe those outsides so that they are clearly parking lanes, and on the inside, turn that into a road diet, just with paint, where there's one general purpose lane going into the city, and one downtown, and one general purpose lane coming out, and with the outside lane being a dedicated transit lane. So that section, anybody here ride the 5? So, great hand in the back. So that is one of the most critical routes for GRTC. So to give them that opportunity to never be stuck, and not only would they never be stuck because they have their own space, it functions as a road diet. So being able to do something like repurpose one outside lane, so rather than it feeling like, oh, I got all this space, you feel like you can drive faster, and people do drive faster. To be able to make a road diet simply with paint, it's going to be a great pilot. I already know some of what's going to happen, but that's the type of thing that will come from Lighter, Quicker, Cheaper.
So a lot of these deaths recently have been caused by left turns. Can you tell me about lighter, quicker, cheaper options and projects maybe coming to the second to address left turns being really egregious and aggressive?
Yes, left turns and pedestrian safety. So some are already underway. And right now we were talking this week and last week about trade-offs, because we want to make sure that we're not overlooking things that we've dismissed for other reasons. Like, that's not something that's going to be worthwhile. But then, even if we come to the same conclusion, for example, you could ban left turns. It would involve a lot of things, like it would involve retiming the entire city's signal system. We have to figure out, if you can't turn left, what do you do? So we're thinking of all the things, both extreme and subtle. So something subtle that we've begun, and there will be more of, left turn hardening is the engineering term, but that's basically, if you picture what's almost a speed bump, but not quite, in the double yellow line. So if I'm driving and I'm coming up here and I'm going to turn left, typically what people do is they're paying attention to the cars coming towards them. If it's busy and there's a gap, they kind of cut the corner and go at an angle to get across as quickly as possible. If you're in the middle of nowhere, that's fine. If you're in a city environment, especially in our area, VCU's nearby, lots of people living nearby, Scouts Edition nearby, you don't ever want to cut the corner, because you never know how many people are going to be in a crosswalk. Or if a parent with their stroller is about to come out into a crosswalk. You just never know. You have to expect those people. So what left turn hardening does is, with that kind of a speed bump, if you're driving, it's very uncomfortable to cut the corner and get the bump. If you do gun it, you're gonna feel that, and then you're gonna slow down. So what they do is they make you come out and make a very deliberate and slow 90-degree turn. So we started 4 of those on VCU's campus, and we got about, I wanna say it's 80 more that are coming citywide. I don't remember the district breakdown, but to your question, yes, absolutely. Because left turns is a huge thing. And that actually goes back to the statewide level issues with policy. Because if you have, one thing that happens with that we're seeing nationwide, I'm saying we, like transportation researchers seeing nationwide, the bigger vehicles not only have a high hood that makes it hard to see people in front, but they have what's called an A-pillar that's really wide. So that's the part of the car that's meant to protect you when you're driving it. If someone hits you and you roll over, your roof won't collapse.
That's right.
But one of the trade-offs is when you're driving, that A-pillar is so wide that you can't see. So I can't see my favorite restaurant owner. I've got the A-pillar, right? So that's something that at the state level, politicians have got to be able to wrestle with. You can't just ban a type of vehicle design, but does it mean that a certain vehicle, a certain size, does it cost more? Is it taxed? I don't know. Do you need a certain type of license? Like, do you need a CDL? I don't know what the answers are, but these are there are physical things that are state law related that could prove helpful. We can't do that, obviously, we can't change the laws, but we could do things on the cheap and more expensive things for these left turns. Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry, new question. Okay. Okay.
So back to Monroe Ward, the left-hand turns are a problem throughout the city, but part of the reason they're a problem is because you have so many one-way streets. Now, what I heard you say is you're just gonna restripe Main Street and do a little bit of a narrowing in between, but I think you need to look at a much broader list of things that can be cheaper, like retiming the lights, because there are times to create a speedway on Main Street going out of the city and a speedway on Perry Street going into the city. You can't do the left-hand turn hardening with a bump unless you're gonna consider putting some speed tables or something like that in there. And we were told, no, you can't do that because this is a minor arterial, whatever.
Yeah.
And pedestrians can go to a crosswalk at a stoplight and cross safely. And so I think we need major re-engineering of these streets, whether it's expensive or lighter, cheaper, quicker. But I have almost been hit, I can't tell you how many times in this area and in the area where Bill Martin is, I walk there all the time. Drivers are distracted and you need to, or drive high,
Yeah.
or whatever.
I know that
And
area
so-
well. Triple Crossing is one of my favorite places to
So
walk.
we
That's an
need to
excuse
do
for
something.
exercise to walk up the hill.
We need to do something.
Yeah.
And
I've got some good news for you.
it's probably a combination of things.
So with both with the road diet, which already acts as a dramatic speed reduction, and in the time since you would have had those 311 requests, we've been able the fire marshal's office is very active with what happens on the streets. First responders are always involved in that kind of conversation. In years past, there was I'll call it a Cold War. I wasn't in the city, but I know that this was a thing, where kind of a passive-aggressive relationship between the fire department and the public works department. And the fire department had traditionally, they told me as much, an approach to, if we feel like it, we'll approve it. So there were many streets throughout the city, Main and Cary included, where their instant answer to something, any kind of traffic calming, was no. There was a blip of hope when, many years ago, one of the fire marshals accepted traffic circles, neighborhood circles, because they do have a calming effect. But we're at a point now where, because the fire marshal's office is actively involved with our Vision Zero task force, which is the group of multidisciplined people who are regularly involved with each other, so it's not just transportation people, coming up with ways to make everything safer. They see firsthand, they're seeing the regular updates, they get it, and so they understand this isn't random transportation engineer who has an idea, this cutesy thing, and I'm asking permission. They understand, oh, that thing is gonna reduce the number of 911 calls. So Main and Cary, on the other side of Belvedere, just recently got a whole bunch of speed tables.
And
there's,
great.
right, so that's the good news. 5 years ago, this would not have happened. So we're at this point now where, because fire, police, Department of Transportation, and others are working together, schools, they join us with safety walks, because of all of these people involved in our regular Vision Zero task force, people see the purpose, they see the outcomes, and so when we're suggesting measures to say, here's the thing that will work, they're not fighting, they're saying, how can we help? So the same thing with the road diet, and the speed tables and all these other kinds of measures, bump outs, it's an exciting time. So let me go to the guy in front of you, and then, yes, sir.
Quick one, I hope. We live in Jackson Ward, and it's an old and historic district. And there's a section of Jackson Ward that has a T intersection at St. James and Claysburg. And for 3 years now, I've been throwing 311s out there and communicating and meetings like such. And we finally got the stop sign at that T put in their proper place. And then they kept going through the stop signs anyway. And so we asked them if they would put pavement markings, crosswalks, ran, big stop, white lines, flying right through it anyway. And so I recently, in the past year, spoke to Danny a little about it, also, that we were hoping that on Clay Street, to stop them from screaming through that, and school buses are doing it at the same time as police officers and all the rest of them, to put a speed table before the stop sign on Clay Street before you get to St. James. And so, I could do another 311, but quite honestly, less than about a year ago, car was coming through, took the liberties of doing what they all do, and someone was coming out St. James, stopped at the stop sign, took off because they knew it was a three-way stop. The car came through, almost hit them, and then it veered off to the left and took out a lady's Porsche. And so we have elderly people there, we have children right there, we have a whole bunch of pedestrian people that need safety.
Yeah.
And a speed bump there would definitely take out the bottom of a car that was going too fast.
So
And I'm hoping that you could do something.
I'm dishing out good news tonight. So that area is coming up for resurfacing, which is our boring way of saying but it's all the good stuff that comes with it. So in the places where we do resurfacing, where there are bike lanes that can come or bus lanes, that's when it happens. So the same thing. So this is coming to that area. I don't remember the exact block, but I know exactly where you're talking
In front
about.
of the old Black History Museum.
Right there.
And it's just got resurfaced after my conversation with Mayor Gould.
Well, if it's already been resurfaced, then the speed tables are coming.
It's already been resurfaced.
Yeah, so then the speed tables come, they come when the temperature gets warm enough.
So that's not gonna happen in this situation, I assure you. Unless you put your mind to it.
About the
About the speed
I
bump.
promise the temperatures will rise. The temperatures will rise.
Hey, yo!
That's my car.
It's 7:30, it's 7:30.
Hold on, my question, if you could just look at that, that'd be great.
Yes,
Thank you.
and then, right, last
My
one?
question, as the president of the Civic Association, my question is, when the community say these are our problems, these are our concerns, and we send them to DPW or whomever, and we get back, well, the traffic study's not gonna do this. Well, as far as community engagement is concerned, what's the workaround so that the civic associations feel safer because they sent these concerns to your department now to say we can make this happen in some way, shape, form, or fashion? And
Yeah.
will we be notified what level those particular requests are assigned? So therefore, if we're saying that we need something like a bump out, well, we're not gonna do it because of such and such and such.
Right.
Well, we could do it. And just one other thing too, because of Harbor, we have money from our parking district. And so can we also use that money to say, we would like to identify this as a traffic calming measure and use the money that's from our parking district to make that happen?
You're in a long string of good news. So this is why, this kind of thing is why community engagement within a DOT. So it's not to give you a workaround, it's deliberately for these kinds of things. So till it's in motion regularly for a long period of time, I'll be the one doing that. That is my happy place. So I'll be the one going to, so I just had one a couple weeks ago in the Blackwell neighborhood. So there are these pockets, sometimes it's a big neighborhood association, sometimes it's tiny, sometimes it's official, sometimes it's not official, but there are a bunch of pockets of neighborhoods all around who don't, for different reasons, they aren't being heard. So part of the thing is gonna be hearing all the pain points, and then also at the same time along the way, helping people understand, so kind of teaching, here's how this system works, here's how this, so rather than setting you up for failure, like, come to a meeting with solutions in mind, focus on the problem. So I'll be able to hear, I can't see around this corner, or people are speeding, or whatever the problems happen to be. This tree keeps falling down and taking out power lines, all these kinds of things. I'll be able to hear these problems, and then we'll be able to form, all right, how are we gonna address that? It might be that the maintenance crew is taking care of a truly traffic calming project. So that type of thing, both old-fashioned face-to-face, those kinds of meetings will be happening, but then also just hangs. Like they're already starting this with the neighborhood community services program. There are other departments that I'll be working with. So it's not just random transportation, come talk transportation. It'll be, let's get to know the neighbors. So hopefully lots of great stuff to come, but these kinds of issues, it is really important. That's why within DOT, have an entire community engagement team. So.
Andy, this is great news. And there was a question before you got here. You know, people are very grateful for the bump outs that have been installed and other measures. I mean, I assume, is it your department that'll be analyzing the, you know, are cars slowing down, are there fewer accidents? Will that be going through your department?
Yes, that will, sorry, dinner's coming. Yes, also, anybody can see, if you search for City of Richmond Speed Data Dashboard, or Speed Dashboard, you can see citywide how we're behaving or misbehaving generally when we drive. It's a really helpful tool. I mean, we of course are using this tool, but it's also, I think, beneficial for everyone to see, because like, there's perceived danger and there's real danger, and perceived is a thing, like that, and it matters. If you don't feel safe doing a thing, you're not gonna do the thing. If you don't feel safe riding the bus, you're not gonna ride the bus. We want you to feel safe. But also, it's really interesting to see some of these streets, just how bad people are behaving on some of them. And those are the ones that we're going to first. So some of the bridges, like the being able to do road diets on the cheap, the lighter, quicker, cheaper, Route 1 across the river, all these different types where we know people are just crazy. Chief Edwards said a few months ago that he was on the news a couple of times saying, I got a speeding ticket. I was going way too fast. He was going fast enough, but another police officer pulled him over. And then now he's telling everybody about it, saying, I'm slowing down. It's too easy to go fast. So I forget what the other thing was. You asked me if that's coming under us, the speed and watching the speeds and the crashes.
Yeah, just well, I think you answered, there's a dashboard and people can see the results of these measures and if they are effective.
Yes, absolutely. And then also on that same page, you'll see, this is called the Vision Zero dashboard, but just overall, how things are trending, so.
So is this where we can also talk about speed on Broad Street downtown? I represent the Downtown Neighborhood Association in the Arts District. And, I recognize that when we had one warm day after Ice and Rice, the motorcycles came out. And I don't know how far east they start and how far west they go, but I know when they pass by our area, sometimes when they're on one wheel, it's something bad waiting to happen, and there's a lot of pedestrians there and other kinds of vehicles there. Sometimes they're sports cars that do the same thing, and Broad Street, I don't think they got the good one, was not a raceway.
It is a huge problem. So we're working with enforcement on that, working as in Department of Transportation can't enforce, obviously, but we know the speed data, but then also I'm in City Hall every day. I hear what you hear. I see the same things at these intersections and just the ridiculous antisocial behavior. So from the enforcement point, we're making sure that they know what we know, RPD. From an engineering point of view, it just so happens in yet another in a string of great news for people asking questions. We're going to be starting a big, it's called a road safety assessment, but it's, again, multidiscipline, people from all different backgrounds, on Broad, from First all the way out to 95, just past 14. And part of that is, all along the way, it's what you're describing and everything else. So it's It's physical features, and it's also what happens when I'm trying to cross. What's happening? It's different times of day. We're gonna go out late at night, we're gonna come in the morning, we're gonna do it at midday. We do this whole group walk and note-taking, and then the very next day, come back with the team giving debrief. This is what we heard, is this right? And then go do an analysis, what can be done, order of magnitude, cost, and all that kind of thing. But that's a very long answer to what you're saying, but I think it's relevant to, even though it's not just about the motorcycles and the four-wheelers and others who are treating that like a racetrack. That's certainly part of it.
I'll be fast, I promise. I love the fact that we're focusing now on pedestrian deaths, which have been happening for decades and decades. And I'm glad, I hope that this is a sustained effort. And for us as a community, it's tragic when any death happens because of an automobile. But the things that you're proposing are the things that we need to be doing, which have longevity. And it may sound silly, but a little bit of pain, a little bit of bump out here, but it's also deprioritizing cars. To get here today, I couldn't get here by public transport, I had to walk. And so it's things like that where we deprioritize cars and put human-centered design at the forefront is how we get less deaths.
You wanna come work for the Department of Transportation?
Yes, I do.
This sounds like a
Honestly,
good commercial. Oh, excellent, excellent.
Yeah, and I will just say, there has been a real hunger for this, ever since I've been involved, either at the community neighborhood association level or on council. So please speak up during the budget process. This was a fight that we had every single budget year, and we finally see it realized, but I'm sure you need more resources, I would imagine. And part of what we'll be doing in this budget cycle is protecting the things that we are really fired up about, and this is one of them, obviously. So thank you so much for coming out for the meeting.
As abrasive as we have, they're very friendly.
I'm willing to stay around if anyone had questions for myself or for Sven. I know those were the people that everyone was most excited to speak to, but I know it's also getting late. So why don't we do like a quick just pause if anyone needs to leave, otherwise I'll share some info. Okay. I know, I should just wrap it up. You guys know how to get in touch with me, but Sven and I are working on the budget. Code refresh, comment period got extended to March 1st. If anyone has been following the improvements that we need in the finance department, please go watch the finance committee meeting from today. There was a really encouraging report that was provided by our CAO about the meaningful progress that they are making there with staffing, processes, and some actual data on things that have already happened. Like they've got someone now out collecting past due taxes. Just in a few months, we've already collected like 154,000. So there's some actual data in there as well. And then we sent a mailer out. Did anyone get the newsletter yet, the printed newsletter? Okay, well, through the mail. Through the mail, okay. All right, well, it will be coming, and then, let's just check my notes here. General Assembly obviously is a huge deal. Also really trying to focus this coming year on opportunities with VCU. There are things that we should be working together on. So they have a new governmental affairs person. We've had some very constructive meetings with them and with the mayor's office, so I'm hopeful there. Like as a starting point, I would like for them to meet with our planning director and say, let's look at where we are in our zoning refresh with where you are in your campus master planning. Let's talk about where you're trying to house your students and how that affects our affordable housing goals. So I think there are things we can work on as well as preservation. Love for them to put money back into GRTC instead of running their own route. Anyone here has?
They have a legal duty to give back to the community as part of their charter as university, right?
I cannot speak directly to how they think they qualify for that. I mean, I'm grateful to have VCU in our city. I truly do love it. My dad chaired the history department. I love the students, but there are things that I feel I don't feel are living up to our expectations and our hopes. So I'm trying to bring positive energy into that relationship and see that it'd be more fruitful. But I will pause right now. Is there anything that people wanted to ask me? It's like district specific, preferably, but.
No, but thank you for having us here.
Thank you, guys.